Tomorrow's People, the podcast brought to you by Personio and me, Perry Timms. Everything starts with people. And in some respects, everything also involves a community. We're going to hear about the work of Karen Dobres and Lewes Football Club, renowned for its unique community perspective to the greatest game in the world. Welcome to Tomorrow's People podcast, Karen Dobres.
Thank you, Perry. I'm very excited to be here.
And it's the first time we've met, but we have been on the other side of screens because you were part of an organisation that won an award that was called Culture Pioneers. I remember that vividly, right in the thick of COVID as well.
Yeah.
And so we will touch on things like culture. We will touch on things like the fantastic work that goes on at Lewes FC in and around the women's football scene. And of course, as we're recording this, we've had the World Cup and we've seen the resurgence of football from a female perspective. And, you know, it makes my sort of heart sing a bit when I see like a big mural of Millie Bright on the wall and stuff and how much that's gotten into the psyche of popular stuff. But what's taxing you at the moment? What's hot for you? What are you up to at the moment, Karen?
Well, actually, I'm right now writing a book called Mismatch of the Day. Because, you know, my background was never football.
Right.
And I got involved, I became a director at Lewes Football Club. And I was kind of like an imposter, a double imposter there. Okay. You know, I didn't really have imposter syndrome. No. Because I thought I was valuable. Yeah. You know, but although I did a bit have it sometimes, to be honest, but because I was a woman, am a woman involved in football, which is traditionally a male bastion, and also I was a woman who didn't have expertise in football, but had kind of been awakened to it via the women's game, and what an amazing product that was in terms of changing our culture, changing our very sexist culture and showing a different way of being a woman, which now we've all seen with the Euros and the Women's World Cup, right?
Exactly. And I went to the Dripping Pan, which is the home stadium of Lewes FC, several years ago when you were a mutually fan-owned enterprise. And I think at the time that I was there, it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, there were the two teams. But I think since then, the story has captured lots of people's imagination because equality is something that's been absolutely at the heart of everything you've done. So I hear you when you say you were a bit of an imposter because you didn't have a football background, but there was something that captured you about what Lewes FC was standing for.
Oh, very much so. I mean, so our club, as you know, as you've mentioned, was made community owned in 2009. Yep. That meant, you know, anyone can buy a share in our football club and become an owner of the club. So you buy one share, you get one vote as to who should be a director on the board. Right. You can stand to be a director at our annual elections, at our annual AGM. And owners get, you know, a special app where they can sort of vote for things. And we have Zoom town halls every few weeks where, you know, you might hear a manager speak or a player or ask questions of the board. So it's kind of a really, I think it's different. Yeah. And it's really, that's our financial sustainability model going forward. It's like a subscription business really in terms of our business model. Yeah. So it's very human-centred on the one hand, and on the other hand, it should make good business sense. Yes. Obviously, there's a lot of, influences on the market and the context in which we're operating, but that's how it should be. Yeah. So via the community ownership, our agenda became much more community focused, and we thought, well, you know, how can we use football for social change so that we benefit our owners? Because that's who we're beholden to as a football club. So, you know, we looked at what the real purpose is of a football club, if you like, which is to bring people together and to address problems in sort of with loneliness or connectivity and all these things that you know make us a community and band us together and make us happy really in our lives, you know. So we thought we could do that with a football club because we already saw that we were doing it, but we just weren't doing it for the whole of the population. We were doing it for kind of half of the population, which mainly men, because that was who was turning up. And our women's team hardly got any supporters, but the men got plenty. So equality was introduced in 2017 season by 2 male directors, saying if you re-elect us, we will be splitting the playing budgets down the middle between the men and the women.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 men.
Yeah.
And we will be giving the women equal resource, equal marketing. They already played on the same pitch which is quite unusual.
Yep.
And so, vote for us, and you're voting for equality in football. And hey-ho, we'll be the first football club in the world to have done this, which tells you a lot about football.
Sure it does.
Yeah.
And so there's something absolutely amazing, isn't there, about being the first. But I would guess even more sort of an evolution of the story, that you were so community-based in the first place, almost like that was the catalyst and the rationale for it. But it's a strengthening and exemplification of what it means to have everybody included in an enterprise like a football club. And it is an enterprise, isn't it? Because you've got budgets, as you said, you've got to run it as a business, but it still has to have that reach of, I can be part of it, and I can have, like you said, enjoyment, social connection, purpose. And it's a terrific tool for social mobility as well, isn't it? About people who otherwise would say, what chances do I have in life? If they are committed and gifted enough, they can find a career in football.
I mean, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? Like running a campaigning football club, or running a football club that uses football as a vehicle for social change. Because on the one hand, you've got to put on matches, like these amazing live events, every season for the men and the women and the under 18s and you've also got to activate people around social issues, you know. So you're doing these 2 things. So it's amazing, everyone knows us for Equality FC and trying to sort of equalise the FA Cup prize fund, for example, and make that fairer, or, campaigning for the anti-gamblification of football, which is another thing that we do. But you'd be amazed at how much time at board meetings is spent talking about the toilets.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually making those work for everyone and pleasant for everyone that's going to use them. But so it's a really unusual business to be in, and especially one that puts people at the centre of it and doesn't use people as commodities, right? Which is what a lot of football clubs, unfortunately, can do.
Well, that's right. And match day experience, as you say, is the pinnacle of a lot of the effort that goes into it. But there's a whole swathe of things that happen. And you're right about the sense of people belonging to something that's got such an everyday feel to it, like you said, the toilets, to key commercial decisions and reach and campaigning and so on. And it does feel like you're a social cause that just happens to play football. That almost feels like it.
Yeah. Well, it can. Listen, you get, speaking personally, you get to a stage in your life where you think, is what I'm doing leaving any kind of legacy? Is what I'm doing having enough meaning in it? Right? Do I want to watch football for the sake of watching football? Or do I want to watch football, enjoy the match and know that there's a purpose to it, that there's more behind it than just kicking a ball, winning a match or losing a match?
Exactly.
Do I want to choose a shampoo to wash my hair in that I know is going to benefit the people that actually are making it in factories? Or do I just want one that's advertised to me? People want sort of purpose with their lives, I think, generally now. I think we a lot of people feel that way.
Definitely.
So I think we're doing it with football.
It's a kind of consciousness thing, isn't it? Because it's an extension of, as you use the word, commodities, and work has become quite commoditised.
I hate that.
Same. In pre-COVID, we had what were called low-skilled jobs, and then thankfully we relabeled them as key workers because we realised how important that work was, even though it was kind of diminished in some sense. And you're absolutely right. When you look at football in the sort of global scale, your Lionel Messi's and PlayStation games, etc., it is such a massive glamorised commodity. However, what we do know is grassroots football has meaning for people every day, nearer to their lives.
And women's football. So the two of them are quite, there's definitely an alignment between the lower levels of men's football and women's football in terms of, the kind of authenticity of those products and the closeness you get to the players and the kind of the less glamorous but very romantic,
of course,
idea of it.
And hearing your story reminds me of almost like David Goliath type principles,
absolutely,
right? Of these huge multi-corporate entities, and then a voice from outside that, which is actually having an enormous amount of influence on the rest of the game.
We do.
Yeah.
The thing is, Perry, that we're really doing things differently, and it's not just a gimmick. It's not some kind of PR job.
No.
We really are. If you talk to anyone volunteering or working at the Dripping Pan, it's been called a quirky place. We've been called the mouse that roared. And the reason for all this, is that because of equality, because we made the move in 2016-17 to pay our women the same as the men, and then got into the championship with the restructured FA. We were playing teams like, we played Manchester United. We beat Liverpool the season before last. We regularly play Crystal Palace, Charlton, and Birmingham. Bigger names in football. Whereas if you look at their men's side, they're massive, right? Now, how do we do that? Because we're little Lewes. So we have to really trade on our brand and our quirks, and we have to be real about it, and we have to stick to our principles, right?
Nice.
So one thing we do, like if you look at the footballing side of things, we have what we call a human-centred strategy, where maybe our playing budget's not as big as some of our competitors, but I know for a fact that last season we earned more in sponsorship revenue than Arsenal women did, because maybe they don't have to try as hard, right, on our women's side. Because if Arsenal men, let's be honest, weren't so sexist and gave their women a bit more, they could dominate. They do dominate. They could do even better. Do you know what I mean? But whereas we don't have that luxury, we don't have a rich Premier League side to have some sort of housekeeping money slid across the table to us. We have to earn it. So on our footballing side, our strategy is to find players that are actually women players that have actually been left out a bit or injured a bit, or maybe had some emotional problems with male coaches, whatever it is. And we will take those players and we will, we will nurse them back to their amazing potential with human-centered compassion, really, and kindness. And that's literally how we treat our players. And then, maybe then they go off to a bigger club, but we've got them for the time that we've got them, and we behave in a way that hopefully nurtures them and makes them believe in relationship, trust. We know that we're not all the same as human beings. Some of us have more privilege than others, and some of us might turn up one day not feeling as well as they did the day before. So we have understanding for that. And we realise that together, if we have trust between each other, we're actually unbreakable as a team. And that is how we compete on the footballing side.
And that's so nice to hear, because you do, again, get some business schools will talk about outperforming small universities who people find their, career ventures in rather than the red bricks and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think there's definitely sanctuaries and safe havens and places where people can, I've often used this phrase, really discover who they are.
Do you know what? That is such an important... It's about being yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like if you can be yourself at work, it doesn't have to just be in football, and be accepted and feel like you do really belong, then that is the battle won, because you're going to get the best out of that person. And that person is going to want to give their best because they feel so safe and like they can actually relax and maybe have fun. God knows, at work.
Fulfillment, enjoyment.
All of those things. So it's really important, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch. So I was talking about by including women in football, which we have done. We've sent out very strong signals to women, not just signals. We've gone and got them and told them to come to Dripping Pan in solidarity with our cause. You might just like football, and what you didn't know is that you've been unwelcome actually for years. Come to our ground, you'll hear a different story. Give it a chance. Help us change the world. It's a really... Lewes FC's story is a really interesting story, and it's all based around inclusion and having weirdos like me around who will say, hang on, where are the breastfeeding facilities here? Or hang on, where are our vegan options,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, noticing things that maybe if you do have a very homogenous board, you might not notice, or that people might not come to you and talk about.
Yeah. That's the other football story I've heard, actually, which is the Forest Green Rovers Dale Vince story, where, Ecotricity is famous for its green energy, and so that's all about Forest Green Rovers and vegan food and so on. So, and people might kind of go, yeah, it's quirky or it's weird, but it kind of captures imagination, doesn't it? It makes people think, why are you making such a stand for difference? Whether they agree with it or not, I guess the intrigue just opens up a conversation, right?
Well, I think football has so much power and influence around the world, right? And so if you can use football to start conversations, then you're winning, because you have an audience, let's face it, of mainly men. You have 3.6 billion people around the world to whom football is like a religion. I mean, there's so much in it for them. It has so much influence over their hearts that if you can talk to them, in Forest Green Rovers case, about sustainability and maybe making changes in their own lives, little changes, maybe they are influenced by the football club a little bit. In our case, we are having conversations about inclusion, not just gender equality, but also, about homophobic abuse at football matches and things like that. If we can talk about that with people who otherwise wouldn't be talking, and believe me, I have.
I bet.
It's very interesting sometimes. Then I think we've done everyone a favour.
Completely. So my local club, Northampton Town, I'm a season ticket holder. During COVID, their community teams would ring my dad every week because they knew he was on his own. I mean, I was looking out for him, but it was just a hella. And my dad said, I can't believe they'd want to do that for me. It was just so lovely. And I think that attachment that people find to the badge and the history and the key players and so on, it goes way beyond that, doesn't it? Because players come and go, right? It's the thing, isn't it? It's an essence, isn't it?
It's the place.
Yeah.
It's the there's something magical about a football club, and it has a very special place in everybody's community. And you don't even have to like football.
No.
There are people that come to Lewes FC, to the men's matches as well, who come for the social aspect. And it might not be massive social aspect. No. It's just having people to talk to.
For sure.
And people that you feel you share something with, even if it's not massive, it's something, and it's somewhere to go and be with people. However many times a year, and you can guarantee that that's going to happen.
It's nice.
So there's like your dad, in COVID times, we also did our helperizer, where, we delivered food and things and medicines, and our players did as well. And that's really quite special, because there are people who maybe don't want to ask their neighbours but their football club, maybe they will.
Probably make their month or year with that kind of appearance. There's something really powerful in that sort of keeping in touch and reality check and all that kind of stuff as well. But I'm guessing that because you've got a kind of psychology background, you're attuning to things like culture and trust and so on must be pretty alive during all the things you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being at Polygram Records and running their counselling service and having to go into the financial director's office every month and justify my budget. And he used to say to me, I want you to prove to me that people here are happier as a result of your service. The fact that they can call the council.
Easy metric that, right?
Right?
Not.
So I used to have confidential feedback forms to try and measure it in some way. But I'll always remember that. And I always think it's, he had budget lines, right? So fair enough, fair enough. And I think he's right. It does have to work. And it did work. So that was great.
Good.
But I mean, when a company offers something like a counselling service, and back then we're talking, what are we talking? We're talking 1994, 5, 6, 7. It was quite unusual, right? But it was pretty necessary in the music industry, to be honest, with these sort of easy access to drugs and alcohol and relationship problems and all the rest of it. So it was great, and people appreciated it. And even if they didn't use the service, they liked the fact that it existed, and that people actually cared, right? Because it was a signal that people actually cared. I think that for me was really important, because I wanted to always work in an area where I felt that people felt cared for. That's,
Yeah.
included,
Yeah.
welcomed, all of those things.
Yeah.
And bringing that to football
Yeah.
has actually not been as hard as people might expect, because football coaching
For sure.
is also about dealing with people and supporting them and in their sort of messy lives, and kind of working out ways that they can manage them and do the work that they need to do.
Yeah.
And obviously my approach was person-centred.
Yeah.
At Lewes FC, we actually use the word human-centred and have a human-centred ecosystem,
Nice.
So it fits very nicely. Again, the other thing that I'm familiar with is performance.
Yeah.
And these players have to perform on the pitch. Everyone performs on a match day, even the staff that are off the pitch.
Yeah.
We have to be up to scratch. In order to do that, we need to support each other. We really do feel that we're all a team on the pitch, off the pitch.
Yep.
It's the same in the music industry. There's a lot of performance going on.
Yeah.
And also the other thing I did before then to fund my counselling therapy was fashion modelling.
Right.
And again, it's performance, and it's kind of, slightly separating the image you put out from the real person, so that you save yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, you know your true self very well. You don't always show it on a performance day, but you can show it the rest of the time.
Oh, it's like that. That links back to an episode in season 1 with Chris Shambrook, who was one of Team GB Rowing's coaches. He would say same thing. And he did say, look, work is different because you practice in sport and then you perform.
Yeah.
In work, you perform, because there is no sort of almost pinnacle moment, right? Okay, you have board presentations or, like you said, town halls or away days or whatever. Yeah. But generally speaking, there's a kind of performative, performance-based rhythm to work.
That is
isn't
true,
there?
yeah.
But not denying that the sport has that intensity on performance.
Well, it's that public, everyone's watching.
Wow. Yeah. But, I mean, you're right. What supports that is people looking out for people, people knowing that things will go wrong and what to do about that, and people building that trust and culture, like you said. What's always interesting to me is when, I sort of go into companies as an advisor and a consultant, and I want to speak to people who aren't the ones who are commissioning me, just to go, what is it like here?
Yeah.
And I get to do that, whether that's somebody on reception or whatever. Yeah. And I really take it as a barometer check, because even their first 5 or 10 words will tell you what it's like, right?
Right, yeah.
So I've been into places where people go, I love it here, just without reservation. And then there are some who say, it's a really interesting place to work. I wish they'd listen to me more, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So we're laying down clues all the time. And I mean, I can imagine how closely knit people are at Lewes. So you're probably not short of narrative and commentary in a sense of how well it's doing. Hey folks, Perry Timms here, host of Tomorrow's People. I have to tell you that I'm loving Personio. It's a game changer for HR. With fantastic features and new updates coming all of the time, it keeps your HR work innovative almost on its own. Check them out at personio.com. That's PERSONIO.com.
I suppose you've got different groups of people at Lewes. You've got kind of the players and the coaches, and you've got the staff who, maybe our commercial manager, our fan and community engagement manager, our CEO, or people like that, communications. And then, you've got volunteers who work closely with staff, especially on a match day. Yeah. You've got directors, and then you've got the fans, and then you've got the owners, and then you've got a crossover between the fans and the owners. So there's a lot of, and then you've got, then even within that, you've got our local community, but also our global community, because we now have owners in 42 countries around the world who can't buy into gender equality in football anywhere else, right? It's because we're still unique. So it's kind of, we've got a lot of different sorts of people, but I'd like to think that all of those people feel very strongly about social justice, really, and about change. Yeah. Because we call ourselves fans of change. Nice. In fact, I've got a little present in my bag for you, which is a fan of change.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's nice.
We call ourselves fans of change because we, a lot of people don't like changing. In fact, I've heard this really funny quote yesterday when someone said to me, the only person that likes change is a wet baby. And I thought, is that true? Right? I don't think that's true.
No, I don't
I mean, we might not like actual change,
No,
but we want change,
Yeah, of
and
course.
because we get angry.
Yeah.
We get angry about the status quo, don't we?
Yeah,
And
stuck. Yeah.
if you look at football as a business or whatever,
Yeah.
we don't have any debt as a football club, which is
Wow.
is amazing, because most football clubs
Yeah.
operate at a terrible loss. It's just, how are they allowed to do this? I don't know.
No, I know.
A lot of football is corrupt.
Yeah.
A lot of football is a bit blind, and to privilege, and to if you look at what happened even at the recent World Cup with Rubiales, kissing Hermoso without consent, and the kind of hoo-ha about that, and how normalised that was for him. You can tell a lot about the industry, and it's a global industry in which we operate. So, I think if you ask anyone at Lewes FC or involved in Lewes FC around the world what it is like, I think they would say it is about change, and it's about football. It's about playing quality winning football at the highest possible level, so that we have a platform for change.
Exactly. And that's an important thing for people to draw as a metaphorical, but also a very strongly aligned connection to the work they do. Some people will say, I've kind of got my job construct, and those things are above and beyond me. But it's almost like what I'm hearing from you is, if you want to be an activist, there are ways you can do that, and it's better together to be an activist.
Oh, you need to be together.
Yeah.
You can lead, and you can do stuff on your own. Yeah. And you can sort of set an example and be influential. Yeah. But you need to, what has happened at Lewes FC is we've attracted similar people around us. Yeah. So, I'm so privileged. I'm so lucky that I work with such fantastic people. I really do. Yeah. A lot of them, we say we approach everything with an open mouth in Lewes, and that's sometimes true. There's some real opinionated people, and we have to kind of learn how to work together sometimes. Sure. But I think we all appreciate that we want things done differently, and that together, if we all get behind it, we attract more like-minded people, and we find a way through that actually works, because it has to work business-wise as well. So it's really it's such an interesting it's such an interesting business to be, and we learn so much all the time. Like I went to an away men's match on Friday night at Ascot. It was an FA Cup match, and I was possibly the only female away supporter there. Right. And I joked because it was so easy to go to the loo. There was no queue. It was spick and span in there. It was brilliant. But I was saying, in a sort of academic, philosophical way, do I feel included here? Yeah. I'm not sure that I do. No. I'm not sure that I do. But then, do I need to?
No, I know.
I don't know. Yeah. It's fine for these men to all be here together having their football match. But if it was a women's match, I'd like to know. I'd like to have people around to chat with, and feel like I belong more. Yeah. It's not that I felt I wasn't included, but I didn't feel I belonged. There is a difference. But it was okay because I'm the age I am, and I've got the experience I've got, and it was fine. But I wonder how, teenage girls would feel about coming. Yeah, it's very interesting football. Yeah. You've got the women's product is different to the men's product. The environment at women's match is different to men. Yeah. Home match is different to away matches. Yeah. So I find it endlessly fascinating in terms of culture and culture building and the kind of people you need around to keep a culture going and to make sure everyone does feel that they have a say and that they are part of it.
For 90 minutes of playing time plus extra, it does feel like it is a microcosm of everything in the world, right? You're absolutely right, because if you were an impressionable 12-year-old young girl at that game, that may put you off future kind of attendance.
Well, yes, and I often think of impressionable 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls, and I think you're right. I know because my cousin played for Brentford. Right. And when I was a young 14-year-old girl, I went to my first football match and watched him play, and I felt unsafe. Yes. I felt threatened. There was abusive language. There were beery blokes. I felt looked at in an uncomfortable way. Even though Gaza was on the pitch, my cousin, I didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, didn't go to another one. No, right. But I'm very, very proud of the fact that when I think of that girl. I know that she can come to Lewes FC for free.
Exactly.
Under 16s getting free.
Nice, yeah.
She will have free sanitary products in the toilets.
Yeah.
If she brings her own sandwiches, she can have her lunch there.
Yeah.
And she can watch. So she's got a completely free experience, and she can watch elite professional women playing this sport and showing her, you know, what potential role models they are, you know, how they can be strong and assertive and bossy and do amazing teamwork, you know, on the pitch. I just, and then if she looks around the corner, she'll see an 8-foot high statue of female pirates from the 18th century at the football match. She'll see the other corner, she'll see a community garden where she can get involved if she wants. Started by a male midfielder at Lewes FC. Just like that's what she'll see when she comes to the Dripping Pan to a women's match.
Culture artifacts they are, aren't they? In the absolute necessity of that word, because they are symbols of what you stand for, what you believe in. There's a story behind them. Workplaces try and do this a lot. Don't always make it very successful, because I think there's obviously this kind of mature, professional, whatever it is. So I guess there's a bit more playfulness in sport.
You know, football, you're supposed to have fun, for goodness sake. It's entertainment, right? And especially at Lewes, because we are like, you know, we'd like to be, we like to have a bit of a laugh. We always do April Fool's Day, always do. You know, we've got beach huts instead of corporate boxes, because we did April Fool's Day. That was an April Fool's Day joke. We're going to get beach huts. And then it sort of went down really well, so we decided to do it, and we got the beach huts.
Loved it.
So just these things build character.
For sure.
And character is brand as
Totally
well.
that,
So
totally
it all works.
There's plenty of monochrome stuff out there. A bit of Technicolor is really, really nice. I'm guessing what I'm picking up from this, people listening to, will also be in that you are wanting to be different, and therefore what you're doing is you are attracting people who also want to be different and probably are, if that makes sense, because you know, there are so many organizations that have, you know, EDI agendas and try and appeal and make sure that there's sort of equity amplified, but it almost feels to me like you don't even need to say that, because it just is.
The thing is, we're not trying to be different.
No,
we're trying to do football differently, and that makes us different, and it makes us attract different people. So it goes back to, you know, we want to change the world, and we work back from there. Right. So whether it's like, you know, doing the weeding at the community garden, or growing sea buckthorn behind the pirates at the statue to make them at home. You know, these things seem like details, and they seem like small things, but actually it comes from this mission.
Big ambition.
About which comes from our values.
Nice, exactly. That's how it should be. I mean, it's like we've just sat in on a sort of compressed version of an MBA lecture with all that, because that's how this stuff goes.
Well, it's so important. I say to people, values. What are they? What's important to you in your life?
Exactly.
If your house was burning down, what would you know? What would you do? Like these things will tell us
what matters,
what we need to do, the actions we need to take.
Always agree with that. There's a phrase I use, which is, when your processes don't work anymore, your culture normally gets you there. And that's pretty much what I'm hearing from you. And it's so important that there is this value life and values organisation alignment, right? That's something people talk about a lot.
I mean, when we have, you know, we always have constraints about money. And we're always firefighting.
Don't we all?
We all do.
Like, wow.
And I'm sure people can relate to this. It's so bloody annoying, because when you want to change the world, you can do without, you know, having to sort of, you know, how can we afford the washing up liquid at the moment? You know, but it's not that bad. But you know, it's we always have this sort of going on. But with our staff, with our interviews, we kind of know when we find the right person.
I get it.
Like, you know, it's like it's someone with a kind of, he's sort of a bit maybe inspirational, someone that's, you know, like, so our fan and community engagement officer is a poet on the side.
Right.
That did it for me. Our Steph, you know, our amazing commercial manager, also sort of has started playing football inspired by the Euros, and is sort of a vegan activist on the side, and and they're very sort of smiley people. I mean, they're just lovely. Our CEO Maggie comes from a human rights and advocacy background. She's not your typical football CEO, and our players, as we continue in our journey and people get to know about us, even our players, like Bradley Pritchard signed his contract on the men's side only if he could also include starting a community garden in that contract. Come on, that's our attacking midfielder.
That's it.
We really do get people who understand what we're trying to do as a club. We're not here just for the football, although that's the most important thing because that's our vehicle. We're here to change the world.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lovely loop back, isn't there, into what matters to people and what you can do to affect change in the world. And too often we do dismiss our minuscule attempts, but it's like, no, but they aggregate and they call out, don't they? And I mean, you've represented, I guess you'd say, the cause as much as it is Lewes FC on some pretty big stages and big arenas and big events. And that must have both a kind of endearing effect for you, like, wow, look at who I'm with, but also like, yeah, but this is part of the mission.
Yes, I mean, that mission is a very good word there.
Yeah.
Because you know what? When I started to volunteer for Lewes FC in 2017, I never dreamt that I would be doing so much public speaking and sort of meeting, lords and ladies and baronesses and goodness knows what else. And I actually didn't, if you'd asked me then, I don't think I would have had the confidence immediately to do it.
Yeah.
But I think, you become less self-conscious when you know what the higher purpose is.
Completely.
So if you always think about, it's like when... we do God, there's so much to say.
Yeah.
We do kind of confidence training even for say police women who don't have the confidence to apply to be sergeants, for example, because the police are one of our sister ships, and I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, I do think Gandhi's right, be the change. And I think everyone at Lewes FC has changed because of our mission. And I have changed. So I've become more confident knowing that I have a very strong purpose to fulfill, and that I can, I have a message to get across. And it's so, I think, the world needs it. It desperately needs more unity, more connection, and more people to kind of bridge across these toxic divides that we have. And I think football can do that. That is what football is for. It's united. It's all about unison, bringing people together. So, I'll talk to anyone and with anyone. And at the end of the day, Perry, we're all human beings, whatever our title is. And also my background comes in there again of counselling. I've met all sorts of people who, as a counsellor, I'm privileged to information about them, personal information, and I know that none of us is perfect.
Exactly.
I've got my things, everyone has. So I think if we all meet each other where we are and meet each other well as human beings, even if we have different views, we can find things in common that we can dialogue about.
Exactly.
And then we've won.
Exactly.
Then we've won.
There is something, isn't there, about that attachment. And so there's a futurist called Mark Stevenson who gifted me this phrase, so I'll homage him on that one, but it's not even his phrase. It's psychologist Daniel Dennett from the US. He was asked, what's the definition of happiness? And he said, find something bigger than you and devote yourself to it.
There you go.
That's it, right? And that's
that
what you just described.
That makes us happy.
That's what you just described.
It can also make us stressed out sometimes.
But it can do,
Let's face it. But it also makes us happy.
I think the word devotion tends to be voluntarily and okay, I mean, absolutely you ride with the bumps, like you say. I mean, you are playing against some, shall we say, more well-capitalised teams, and you are community-based, and by virtue of all the things that you're telling me, you are incredibly diverse about where you put your time, effort and attention, as well as the playing field, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what you're competing with in financial terms, you're outperforming everybody in spiritual terms. Spiritual capital.
I think we probably are. Yeah, we probably. I think we are. We give so much meaning to people.
Yeah.
And when we get so much back.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of anecdotes I've got is crazy. But I'm just going to say one thing, because Lewes FC men, after the spate of violence against women that didn't end for goodness sake, but it was very highly publicised with the murder of Sarah Everard.
Yes.
Lewes FC men set up a call him out campaign, right? So they're calling out misogynistic and sexist behaviour within themselves and others, right? And this spread, this literally spread, because at the Dripping Pan, when they're doing that, we don't actually get much sexism and misogyny at the Dripping Pan, right? As you might expect, really. But we do still get away fans shouting homophobic abuse at men's matches.
Right.
So our captain, Mitch Nelson, shout out to Mitch, who's not our captain anymore, actually, but this was a season ago, actually stopped a match because away fans were shouting homophobic abuse at his defender. And he wasn't having it. Just because he's got long hair. Like, this is the crazy stuff. But we can't allow that stuff to go on unchecked.
Exactly.
And because then it becomes the normal wallpaper that we all live by. Right? So we have all this amazing stuff going on that's actually detail and just one person at a time, maybe. But because the more of a platform we get, and we've got a big platform, as you say, we are changing hearts and minds, and it's a great thing to be doing.
And it's a brilliant reminder for those people out there grappling with a lot of change. So as we're recording on this, Mark Carney, the former governor of Bank of England, has just delivered a speech, and he says, look, what we've got at the moment is we've got to try and change everything everywhere all at the same time, right? And that's how it feels. But I think within that, what you've just described is, it is a kind of spread bets, right? It is lots and lots of little things that you're doing, not just putting all your chips in one area. And they aggregate, don't they? They build up.
But you find something to focus on.
Right.
It might be your own doorstep. You find something to focus on and you put your energy there. And in our experience at Lewes FC, that escalates. So it's really like, so we sort of want to do everything, but actually we focus on gender inequality because that's where we can make a difference and demonstrate that difference, right? And because we all have limited resources of time, of money and everything, we have to focus in on one thing, maybe two or three, but a main thing, and we make that the thing that we create change in, and then it works. We do it on everything, whether it's the posters, whether it's the campaigning, whether it's the signs at the football ground. That's where we have to focus our energy.
I'm going to make a mental note on a podcast, which I've never done before, but I'm going to connect you to Holly, who leads on equality, diversity and inclusion at Personio, who sponsors this, because you two will get on like a house on fire. So that's something there. But it is about those connections, isn't it? It's about just the sort of the emission of what I guess we'd call viral campaigns, but it's not. This feels much more like it is attaching to people's
it's a movement
desire. It is absolutely.
It's actually, because football is a bit like a religion, like I said, and it's awakening something in people's hearts that's been buried, because they get I was fed up. I had #MeToo, #gender pay gap all over my timelines, and I didn't know what I could do about it. I didn't know what action could I take that would make any difference at all to these social problems that would affect my son and my daughter, and all their friends. And I just thought, what can I do? And then football came along. Who would have thought? Football came along, and I got involved.
So I think we get unexpected vehicles with which sometimes to channel our passion, pursuits and ambitions through, not just in the kind of what I'd say predictable sense of what it is, but all the things that are adjacent to it, peripheral, and actually play a part in the wider society that we're all in and all want to see it be better.
I just find football so useful because, do you know what it is? And this will sound a bit weird, but I have access to men. And it's men that in this particular instance need to change in order for gender inequality to change. Women we can gather, we can do things on our own, we can do amazing things, but it's actually, because it's a patriarchy, it's actually men who need to be real agents of change here, special agents.
Now, I know there's more to come from both your story and the Lewes FC story, so I'm sure when we are out of the traps with this one in the edited version, there'll be some other things that we can refer to, perhaps some exciting, almost like broadcast initiatives. I mean, I don't know if there's anything you want to leave us with about where to find out a bit more and what to look out for from you and Lewes FC.
Well, I mean, there are some very exciting things going on at the club at the moment that are public, which is that we are potentially getting an investment from a group called Mercury 13, who are a group of investors whose values very much align with us around women's football.
Great.
And they are going to invest in part of the women's team. And the investment there will mean that we can free up budget for the men's team.
Nice.
So famously, we say equality is a rising tide that lifts all our boats. And that's been proved loads of times. Like we've got this spanking new pitch because of the women. It's just, and the men love it. So we know that this will work. But what it will mean is that we will evolve our conversation from equality to equity.
Nice.
Because in effect, the women will be getting more than the men because of their status in the footballing world, because they're in the championship aiming to promote to the Super League.
Wow.
Right? So, and the men are really happy with this, the men's team, and they understand. And they are amazing male agents of change, actually. So this is on the cards. It's subject to an owner's vote, which looks very promising at the moment. So, you know, by the time people hear this podcast, we'll know one way or the other. But this should free us up a bit to really compete in the amazing arena of women's football.
And spread the word and bring more powerful, impactful, and I guess you'd say willing change in those who are at the moment not quite in the wonderful space that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, but what we really need and what we've always needed is more owners, right, of Lewes FC. And it's really easy to become an owner. You can go onto our website, 2 clicks, it's 50 quid, you own a football club, right? And we've never been able to publicise that enough. We've never been able to put a campaign behind it because we've never had the resource. If we get the resource, from which we will, hopefully, from these investors to do it, then, you know, in years to come, there's no limit on how many people can own Lewes FC, right? So it's an amazing model. So it's like, you know, a subscription model. So in years to come, we won't need investment, and we probably won't, you know, it's just what we can do. Say we get to 250,000 owners, we'll be more owned than Barcelona, and we'll be thrashing it around the world, Perry, basically.
Let's look forward to that.
And people will say, how did you do that? And we'll say, by treating people properly.
Exactly. And by developing the trust and the passion and the channels, as we said. Karen, that's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for sharing all the great work that you're doing and the team are doing, and in every single guise. It really is held up there as a human-centred, putting people first, community-based sport venture that's got ripples to the world. So,
thank you. Thank you so much for having me and the chance to talk about it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. If you've enjoyed this episode of Tomorrow's People, please subscribe and check out our previous episodes from wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you want to transform your people processes, head to personio.com.